For the majority of my professional life, I served as a detective in the 5th Precinct of New York, confronting the harsh realities of the city's relentless underbelly. Day in and day out, I immersed myself in the grit and grime, navigating the challenges of a metropolis that refused to slumber. Despite the hazards, the nights devoid of sleep, and the unsettling encounters with the darkest facets of society, I can honestly declare my love for my profession. The thrill of delivering justice to those who had transgressed provided me with an undeniable sense of fulfillment and energized me to the core. Then, on a fateful Saturday evening, my life took an irreversible turn. My daughter, Julia, fell victim to a fatal hit-and-run accident, leaving me shattered to the core. The situation was compounded by the fact that Julia's mother and I had divorced just a month before her tragic death. It seemed she held me responsible, given that Julia was en route to spend the weekend with me. The constant reminders of Julia's absence were agonizing, and I often found myself sitting in her room, unchanged since the weekend before her untimely departure. The unsolved case file on my desk regarding this tragic accident became an unbearable weight. Desperate for a break and a chance to heal from this heart-wrenching event, I considered a change of scenery. When a senior investigator position opened up in a quieter, more serene part of upstate New York, I seized the opportunity without hesitation. I believed I had bid farewell to the relentless, challenging cases, each one seamlessly merging into the next. However, on this Christmas Eve, I find myself confronted with a stark reminder that no place is immune to the clutches of crime. During the course of this ordinary shift, my gaze fixates on a charming lake house, now unsettlingly silent and marked off by police tape. The absence of Christmas decorations on the house caught my attention, a peculiar detail that struck me as odd. In a town where nearly every structure is adorned with festive lights and wreaths, I turned my attention to my rookie partner, Jody. This marked her first homicide case. I vividly recalled my own experience. There's nothing quite like the unanticipated impact of death. "How are you faring?" I asked, maintaining a low and steady tone. "I'm okay," she responded quickly, almost too hastily. The tension in her shoulders and her reluctance to meet the house's gaze conveyed more than words could express. I wasn't known for eloquent speeches. My approach leaned more towards action. Yet, despite that, I felt the need to offer her some form of reassurance. "Let me level with you," I said, maintaining a steady tone. "Homicides are never a walk in the park, but trust me, your instincts brought you here, and that's no fluke. Stick to the facts, stay composed, and we'll navigate through this maze together." Her attention was fixed on the ground for a moment before reconnecting with mine. A nod followed, accompanied by a faint smile gracing her lips and a glint of gratitude in her eyes. "I appreciate that, Phelps," her voice now firmer. "Count on me not to disappoint." Stepping out of our inconspicuous cruiser, the hush of the morning is momentarily shattered by the crunch of snow beneath our boots. Our breaths materialized as small clouds in the chilly air as we approached the house. Drawing closer to the entrance, an officer stepped forward. "You folks from the state police?" he queried. I delved into my coat and produced my badge. "We are indeed. I'm Detective Dylan Phelps, and this is my partner, Detective Jody Walker." The officer nodded. "Sergeant Tristan Banks." He introduced himself and motioned toward the house. "Follow me. I'll brief you on what we've uncovered." Banks guided us through the front entrance, its frame bearing the unmistakable signs of a forced entry. Moving through the confined hallway, I observed the residence's testament to a life lived in tranquil simplicity. On the walls, old photographs encapsulated memories frozen in time. Upon entering the living room, we were greeted with a jarring sight. The furniture had been upturned, a clear indication of a struggle. Splatters of blood adorned the walls and floor, creating a gruesome tableau that told a story of violence. It was evident that this wasn't a random act. The destruction was too personal, too targeted. Banks' voice was somber as he filled us in. "The victims were Edward and Harlow Braithwaite," he began. "Both were in poor health. Mr. Braithwaite had a stroke last year, and Mrs. Braithwaite sustained a fall a couple months ago. They're not native New Yorkers. They actually came over from England in their early 20s. Then, something caught my eye. A small Christmas tree tucked in the corner of the room, adorned with a few simple ornaments and a string of twinkling lights. Beneath it, a scattering of wrapped presents lay untouched, their cheerful colors jarring against the dark backdrop of the crime scene. "Who discovered them?" I inquired. "Their housekeeper," Banks told us as he guided us through the house toward the backyard. "She was here to clean and run errands, picking up Mr. Braithwaite's prescription, and stumbled upon this." As Banks escorted us through the backyard, we approached the scene a few feet from the house. There, sprawled on the pristine snow, lay the lifeless bodies of Edward and Harlow. Their bodies were outstretched, limbs extending as if frozen in the act of crafting snow angels. I lowered myself beside them, surveying the scene with meticulous attention, attempting to reconstruct the final moments of the Braithwaites. The condition of the bodies unmistakably suggested a vicious assault. The wounds were profoundly savage, maybe an axe or hatchet had been used. The cuts exhibited irregularity, a haphazard pattern, indicative not of a skilled assailant but rather someone unhinged, lacking control. I noticed the absence of blood surrounding the bodies, which implied they were arranged there after death. I rose and faced Jody, who had been silently absorbing the scene. "No defense wounds," Jody observed. "They probably never saw it coming." I nodded in agreement, my thoughts racing through the endless possibilities of who could have committed such a crime. "Sergeant Banks," I called out to him. He had respectfully allowed us space to investigate the scene. "We'll need to canvass the area, talk to neighbors, anyone who might have witnessed or heard something. Additionally, we require a comprehensive list of individuals with access to the Braithwaite's residence. We'll dive into it immediately. I'll direct my team to kick off the neighborhood sweep," Banks said. Jody and I split up, beginning our initial evaluation, methodically combing through the area, searching for any clues that might have been preserved in the snow. Something captured my attention, a set of snowmobile tracks stretching away from the house. The tracks were clearly defined, slicing through the pristine snow. Starting near the rear of the house, they winded their way into the thick line of trees toward the property's perimeter. Before I could delve deeper and inspect, Jody's voice sliced through the quiet air, urgent yet composed. "Dylan, over here." I quickly approached her, taking note of the pair of faint footprints she'd uncovered. They led toward a small tool shed, partially hidden by a cluster of bare trees. The snow around the footprints was lightly dusted, which suggested that they weren't recent, but they stood out as the first tangible lead we'd come across. We moved toward the shed, our sidearms drawn. Using my left hand, I gently pushed the door open. My right hand firmly gripped my Glock, ready for any potential threat. The door swung open and revealed the dim interior of the shed. We paused for a moment, letting our eyes adjust to the subdued light filtering through the dusty windows. The shed appeared cluttered, filled with gardening tools, old paint cans, and various pieces of hardware. There was no sign of anyone inside. The fleeting sense of relief was replaced as our attention was drawn to a conspicuous gap on the wall-mounted tool rack. Among the neatly hung shovels and rakes, there was an empty space where a tool should be. It was outlined with a faint layer of dust, suggesting that whatever occupied that space had been in place for a while before being recently removed. Jody stepped closer. Her eyes narrowed as she inspected the vacant space. "Seems like an axe is missing," she noted, gesturing towards the shape of the outline. "Possibly our murder weapon." "We should bring in forensics," I suggested. We returned inside the house. While Jody contacted the forensics team, I took a moment to survey the living room once again. Once more, my eyes were drawn to the small Christmas tree nestled in the corner of the room. The shimmering lights cast a gentle radiance upon the array of wrapped gifts underneath. Most of the packages are adorned with tags signifying their origin from friends and family, serving as heartfelt tokens of affection. However, nestled discreetly at the rear, one gift stood apart, wrapped in red wrapping paper, its bow slightly askew. The tag read, "For Edward and Harlow, from Santa Claus." With precision, I carefully undid the tape, mindful not to obliterate any potential clues. As the paper fell away, it unveiled a modest, unadorned box. As I lifted the lid, there was a simple USB drive. "Take a look at this," I told Jody, holding up the USB drive. Jody's eyes widened slightly. "That's peculiar. It could contain anything. We need to get this to the tech team right away." As the morning advanced, the house was disrupted by the arrival of the forensics and tech teams. In the dining room, away from the bustling investigation in the living room and the outdoors, the tech team set up a secure laptop. Jody and I encircled the laptop. The room hushed except for the faint hum of the machine, as we observed closely as a technician inserted the drive into the laptop. The screen flickered to life, unveiling a series of video files. The technician selected the first file, and the room was filled with the sound of children singing Christmas carols. As we reached a clip titled, "Santa Claus is Coming to Town," a shift occurred. The familiar melody started, but was abruptly cut off. The screen went dark momentarily, and upon its return, the scene had transformed. A figure emerged, clad in a Santa suit, but not the usual Jolly Saint Nick. The suit was worn, the colors faded, and the Santa mask grotesque, with twisted features and vacant, staring eyes. His digitally distorted voice sends a chill down my spine. "Ho, ho, ho," he began, his voice unnaturally deep and menacing. "Welcome to my special holiday performance. Edward and Harlow, pillars of the community? What a load of garbage. Where was their holiday cheer? Where were the lights, the songs, the joy?" He sneered. He paced in what appeared to be a dimly lit room, and the camera struggled to focus on him. As he moved, he gestured wildly, as if performing for an unseen audience. They denied the essence of Christmas, the very heart of it. They needed to be taught a lesson, he continued, his words sending a shiver down my spine. "Those who forget the spirit of the holidays must pay the price," he ranted. "I am the enforcer of cheer." The video abruptly shifted to a distant view of the Braithwaite's house, revealing that he had been surveilling them. The video ends, and we were left in stunned silence. "This is twisted." Jody was the first to break the silence. "It's like he's living in his own sick fantasy. He's completely delusional." "We need to move quickly," I said. "He's plotting something for tonight. This isn't just about the Braithwaites anymore. It's a threat to anyone in this town who doesn't conform to his warped idea of holiday cheer." I signaled for Sergeant Banks to join us, and he promptly provided a concise briefing on the situation. "Activate the entire force," I emphasized. "All available officers must be deployed to the streets, ensuring the safety of the residents, and we should notify the locals, advising them to either showcase some form of Christmas decoration or consider relocating for the night." I didn't want to potentially cause widespread hysteria on Christmas Eve. We found ourselves racing against the clock, collaborating with the local police force amid mounting pressure. The town transformed into a hive of activity, officers going door to door, offering guidance to residents while striving to maintain an air of calm. Although the hotline was operational, the calls pouring in mostly proved to be false alarms or well-intentioned tips leading nowhere. As nightfall approached, Jody and I retreated to the police station, converting a small conference room into our makeshift command center. Maps, crime scene photographs, and notes on potential leads lined the walls. As I sifted through the Braithwaite's personal records, Jody called out, "Phelps, take a look at this." She'd been scouring local social media groups, tracking any unusual activities. What she uncovered was a series of posts from a man, Sebastian Nowak. His profile was a collage of disturbing imagery and rants about the loss of traditional values. His fixation on Christmas traditions and disdain for those not celebrating in the proper way mirrored the sentiments expressed in the killer's video. Records show he was a loner, with a pattern of mental health issues, largely untreated due to his distrust of institutions. The tech team analyzed the footage for any metadata that might have been left on the file. They scrutinized the background for distinctive features, anything that might give away the location. It was painstaking work, but finally they found something. A glimpse of a unique tree species, one that's native only to a specific area near the Braithwaite's house. Cross-referencing with local forestry records, we narrowed our search to a secluded region on the outskirts of town. Satellite imagery identified isolated cabins, and one registered under a pseudonym linked back to Sebastian Nowak. It was the kind of place perfect for staying hidden, away from prying eyes. The details aligned too well with our suspect's profile, and we couldn't afford to ignore this lead. I called the district attorney's office and detailed the evidence, and within an hour, the prosecutor signed the search warrant. As we reached the cabin, the eerie atmosphere escalated. Nowak's place was surrounded by an excess of Christmas decorations, but they radiated no joy. Harsh blues and reds blinked erratically, and twisted figures populated the yard. A large, dilapidated Santa figure stood near the entrance, its once jolly face now cracked and soulless. The sight of a snowmobile parked haphazardly near the cabin solidified our suspicions. Its tracks, identical to those found at the Braithwaite's house, confirmed we were on the right track. We spread out and covered all exits, and I signaled Jody and 2 other officers to join me at the front door as we ascended the cabin staircase. Positioned by the door, I knocked forcefully, announcing our presence. "Sebastian Nowak, this is the New York State Police. We have a warrant to search the premises. Open the door." But there was no answer, no hint of movement within. I exchanged a glance with Jody and the others, a tacit agreement forming. "Prepare to breach," I whispered, signaling to the officer with the ram. We stepped back and gave him space as he lined up in front of the door. With a swift, practiced movement, he slammed the ram against the door, the sound reverberating through the woods. After a few forceful hits, the door gave way, swinging open to unveil the cabin's dark interior. Weapons drawn, we cautiously entered the cabin, progressing through the threshold. Our flashlights revealed a living space consumed by chaos and neglect. Tattered curtains swayed in the draft, and the air inside was stale, heavy with the scent of mold and something acrid. Room by room, we methodically cleared the cabin, finding it empty. Finally, we reached the room with a record player. A cluttered space, filled with bizarre trinkets and disturbing drawings on the walls. The record player sat on a rickety table, its needle dragging across the vinyl in a slow, methodical rhythm. Something caught my eye. A series of wires ran from the record player, intricately connected to what appeared to be a homemade explosive device. The realization hit me. The record player was rigged to detonate the explosives when the record ended. "Explosives! Everyone out now!" Jody and the others reacted instantly, sprinting towards any exit they could find. I grabbed Jody by the arm, practically throwing her towards a broken window. As she cleared, I followed, heaving myself through the narrow opening. We tumbled onto the snow-covered ground outside, momentarily stunned by the cold. Turning back, I could see other officers following suit, diving out of windows and doors. Scrambling to our feet, we raced away from the cabin. The final notes of the carol played out, and with a deafening roar, the cabin erupted into a ball of fire and smoke. Shockwaves rippled through the forest, debris falling around us as we huddled on the ground. Scanning the aftermath, my first thought was Jody. I called out her name amidst the smoky air, thick with the scent of charred wood and explosives. "Jody!" My flashlight pierced the haze as I searched frantically. A few feet away, I spotted Jody lying on the snow, dazed and disoriented. I rushed over, my mind racing with concern. For a split second, as I looked down at her in the snow, my mind played a cruel trick. I saw my daughter, Julia, her body broken and lifeless after the hit-and-run accident that tore her away from me. I blinked hard, forcing the haunting image from my mind, refocusing on the present. I bent down beside her and swiftly checked Jody for injuries. A quick evaluation shows no serious injuries, just a few cuts and bruises. "Jody, can you hear me?" I gently shook her shoulder. Her eyes flickered open and locked onto mine with a look of astonishment. "Dylan," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. She managed to sit up. Her face revealed a mixture of pain and confusion. "I think I'm okay. Thank God you're okay, Jody. I've got you," I reassured her, extending my hand to help her up. She held onto it firmly, hauling herself to her feet with a grunt of effort. I swiftly shifted my focus to the other officers. My flashlight scanned the snowy ground for any signs of the others. That's when I noticed him, Sergeant Banks, laying motionless a few yards away. My heart sank as I dashed to his side. The blast had thrown him against a tree, and it was clear he was gravely injured. I kneeled beside him and assessed his condition with a sinking feeling. His breathing was shallow, his face pale and contorted in pain. "Officer down. We need immediate medical assistance. Repeat, officer down." I did my best to administer first aid and stem the bleeding. However, it was evident that he needed more help than we could provide here in the woods. The sergeant's eyes flickered open, meeting mine. He attempted to speak, but only a faint whisper emerged. Leaning in closer, I strained to catch his words. "Dylan," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the crackling flames and distant sirens. "Get the damn bastard."